Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. This is CMG TALK. This is Catherine Gallagher. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining me. And depending what time you are, joining me at, I wish you a good day, good evening, or a good morning. I just want to thank you first of all, because I always think it's really important to appreciate the time that people give to listening, to hearing, and to making the time to invest their time in the episodes that I put down in the podcast. And I understand that people will say, but Catherine, you're giving a service. And I do that because I genuinely do actually love what I do, and I care. I very much care. And people that work with me, whether it's clients, whether it's through trainings, whether it's through coming to my talks, will know and will say that I am very much invested in what I do. So this morning I got up. You might be thinking, why are you telling me this? So this morning I got up and I did my routine. I wonder if you have a morning routine. I get up, I get myself organised, I shower, get myself ready, I have breakfast, and I do my routine of exercise. At the moment I'm in a strength fitness programme. Because I quite enjoy it, to be honest with you. I have these Zumba, I don't know if you can hear them. I've got these Zumba weights and they rattle. I really quite like them because I know when I'm doing a good job. Because I can hear them really going, right? It's great. So I have those and I do my own routine and structure. And I think it's really important to have your own thing. And I wonder what you do to keep yourself in a healthy structure routine. Now today, what I'd like to do is just welcome you into another type of way of thinking. We've talked about the procrastinator, haven't we? We've talked about the disruptor. We've talked about different types of personality and ways of thinking, being and doing, and how they can either be positive or actually go to a different spectrum where they can be quite intrusive or unhelpful. What I'd like to do is to talk about the overthinker. The overthinker. Now, sometimes people will overthink things to the point where it paralyses them. Now, I wonder if this is something that you can relate to. Often people that have a nervous disposition, right? A nervous disposition. Somebody that, feels anxiety, has anxiety, low moods. Maybe they've been diagnosed with depression. Some people like to self-diagnose. Often people come to me, they'll tell me they have depression. They might have saw the doctor and the doctor's given them medication. And often before they've actually had anything like, some kind of structured type of therapy type work. And I will say to them, so what type of depression do you have? And it often surprises me that they haven't actually had a discussion about that. They don't know whether it's mild, moderate, severe depression. And often that's something that they will discuss with a doctor then after I've spoke to them. Because as a therapist, psychotherapist, therapist, and psychological ambassador, I don't diagnose. I stay in my lane, if you like. I know my boundaries. If you've listened to the previous episode, which was quite a long one deliberately, it was all about boundaries. Because your boundaries are about self-respect, your respect and respecting others. And it's really important that you understand and take ownership and accountability and responsibility for your own health. Because often people will come to self-help, they will come to other types of talks, or they'll go into some kind of therapeutic process and they'll often look for things, but then they'll not often look to know how to implement these strategies and tools or the work for life. Because what we're doing is we're seeing how to invest in ourselves forever, long term. Because the self-investment is saying that you are worth it. You're recognising your own worth and your own value. And that's really how we give our MOT to our mental health. Are you with me on this? Is this making sense? If you don't MOT your car, if you don't MOT your house, if you don't look after things and invest and give care and love to your body, then things break down. It's the same as your mental health. Quick fixes are never the answer. And people often look for shortcuts because we're human and we're human beings. And we often want to get the solutions. Just fix me. Tell me what to do. Give me the answers. Give me the solutions. But in my line of work, my job is to open a toolkit, talk through and explore, maybe help to give insight. But ultimately, it is about our individual understandings and about implementing these things with our own ownership and accountability. People can show us how to do something, but we have to act on it. Is that making sense? So one of the things that often people come to me, and they will come to practitioners and ask about the unhelpful thinking, the overthinking, the thoughts that we have. And it's very common. Now, you might have listened to the episode, and if not, go back and listen to it, that I put on about unhelpful thinking, the unhelpful thoughts that we do. Overthinkers tend to do this as a way that our brain tricks us to tell us that it's a way of protecting ourselves. But often, an overthinker is someone that has learned to do this through experiences, maybe through mirroring, maybe it's through observations, maybe they've learned to do this, but we're not born. Babies are not born as overthinkers. No baby is born as an overthinker. And I, through my nursing, got the privilege of delivering babies. And I yet have found at that time, right, a baby that was delivered as an overthinker. Okay, right. Okay, maybe that's a bit extreme. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. If we're not born, we learn, we grow through experiences and our upbringing, and we become. Okay? So then we go into, is it my fault? Now, I'm not big on blame. Right? Like accountability, responsibility, ownership is a different, healthier way of looking at things, I think. What do you think? I'm just interested, right? People often will then message me about their thoughts and, their understandings, what their ideas are, which is great, right? But I wonder what you're thinking if you're listening to this as a person that maybe you might be thinking, well, I'm really good actually at compartmentalising, or I'm really good at managing my thoughts, my self-talk, and actually I don't tend to dwell on things or ruminate on things too much. Or you might be saying, actually, do you know what, Catherine? I think you're right. I think sometimes something sticks there, and it's like that record player in the short-term memory where it just goes round and round and round and round and round. And then it hits that groove as a record player does. And it's like it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And the feelings become stronger and stronger and more intense the more I think about it. The more I think about it, the worse I feel, because you reinforce those thoughts, those feelings. Overthinking can be what? Catastrophizing is the thing that people often talk to me about. It became a thought. Suddenly, it becomes the worst case scenario. Suddenly, it's the worst it could ever be. But is it really? Is it really the worst it could ever be? Or is it just I'm looking at it that way right now? And how do we manage something that is become so big so unmanageable in our mind because of how we're looking at it, how we're choosing to look at it. And what we really need to be doing, surely, is to perspective take. Weigh up the pros and cons. Take back control. Maybe start looking at taking some positive action. Understanding power is knowledge. Be well informed. Understanding that if we stay stuck and overthink and continue to catastrophize, making something bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, we feel overwhelmed, disempowered. Then we go into procrastinating often, don't we? Well, I just can't imagine how I could possibly deal with this now. It just seems so big, so huge, so unimaginable. I just I don't know where to start. We need to hit the pause button. Breathe and write down what the problem is. And whether we ask a trusted friend, whether we go to a professional and get the facts, whether we pause, write down the pros and cons, whether we challenge ourselves with what's the worst that can happen, and then look at what is the realistic, reasonable, what's really realistically going to happen, and what am I imagining is the worst case scenario. People often say prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I don't know. I think often the catastrophizing is our body, brain, mind telling us that if you can prepare for that, then you're prepared for anything. But the reality is we build up so much stress, we release the cortisol stress hormone, the adrenaline goes, and we just can't think clearly. Our heart's going, adrenaline's going, pulse is going, and we're in flight. We're not thinking and processing, so we need to slow everything down, calm everything down, and start having that considered thinking. Pause, stop, think, and reevaluate. Catastrophizing never gets us anywhere constructive. Neither does panicking. That's just a fact. But it's human sometimes to do that. It's human sometimes to do that. But what else can we do for an overthinker? What other types of behaviours, thought processes can we go through? Sometimes if we're an overthinker, what we do is we then minimise. Well, it can't really be that bad because I don't really want to deal with it. So we just push it to the side. We ignore, we avoid, we deny. And that becomes really unhelpful because it's still there. It's just we've decided I can't cope with that, I can't deal with that, and I'll just not bother. People often who maybe have an addiction problem, maybe they have built up debt, they put everything in a drawer, hide it away in a black bag. They minimise the problem, they just avoid and ignore and deny. But it's still there. An overthinker often will ignore any positive. They'll ignore all the positives. Doesn't matter what the positives are. All I see right now is the negatives. And if somebody brings in or introduces a positive, I know this is happening right, but just think about, you still have these people, you still have this. I know, but that's not what I'm thinking about. All I see is, it's overtaken. That's all I think about. We negate anything that could possibly be a positive. But until we gain a perspective, it's hard to move forward. Until we see that there are more other things that are going for us, that are working well for us. We then can then see, well, okay, these things are okay, but this is the thing. So I narrow it down and this is the thing. And then I chunk it. I break it down to small measurable steps. And then I take one step and I start then tackling it step by step. I set small, start, smart, measurable goals, time-bound goals. Because our brain often does mental filling. It fills in the blanks for us, but sometimes it doesn't get it right. It guesses. And often we miss out vital information when it does that. It just makes assumptions. Well, it must be this, it must be that. And I always say to people, if in doubt, check it out. If in doubt, check it out. Get the facts. Know what you're dealing with. Because somebody that's overthinking often will not question. Overthinking, they'll not necessarily stop, challenge or question. They'll stay in their head. They'll run things through their mind. But they'll not necessarily be factual, transactional with it. So let me get this straight. What exactly are we talking about here? Can you just help me to make sure that I know it's this, and then it's this, and then it's this? Procedural, factual, transactional. It's about regaining a sense of direction and regaining a sense of control. Because if we keep it in our heads, it runs through our heads. If you write it down, you can start beginning to see and process it differently, because our brain will see it and process it differently. Overthinking becomes really unhelpful. Understanding and giving yourself that compassion and telling yourself, it's understandable you're thinking about this a lot. This has maybe been a shock. Maybe this has been something that you feel out of control with. Maybe this is something that you didn't want to have happen. Maybe you're dwelling on this, ruminating about this, because maybe you can't quite get your head around it. This is to be expected. So giving yourself that kindness and that understanding is helpful. Beating yourself up about it, being hard and unkind to yourself is not. Reassuring yourself this will pass. In time, it's just going to take a little more time. And start maybe reflecting, writing a journal, getting a perspective by practicing gratitude so you understand and let in some of the things that are working for you. And a good way of gratitude is recognising the small things that work for you. It might be getting that parking space that you never thought was going to be there. It might be that somebody smiled and helped you out in a nice, kind way. It can be small things that give you gratitude in every day. And these help you along your way. It doesn't have to be big gratitudes. But if you find 3 gratitudes every day, at least, your brain starts processing things differently and better, and you reward yourself with the dopamines, releasing natural chemicals of the dopamines and the oxytocins and the serotonin and the endorphins. These natural chemicals, if you've been listening to my episodes, go back and listen to them and get to understand how you can give yourself these natural release of chemicals that help you to feel good. Exercise is good. Feeling active, be proactive. Unhelpful thinking keeps you stuck. And if you want to be unstuck, you have to take positive steps and positive action. So being organised and organising your thoughts, structuring them a bit better and understanding what the problem is and asking yourself, is this my problem to sort out? Because sometimes we ruminate and worry about someone else's problem when really it's not ours to take on. We might have sympathy or empathy or compassion for what somebody's going through, and maybe our job is to be an active listening ear. We might give support, but we can't fix it. We can't sort it. It's not ours to deal with. If it's our child or a minor, or it's somebody that's vulnerable and there's some things we're having to step in about, then we need to be a bit more organised with our thoughts and our thinking and get a plan in place. Sometimes what happens is we overthink and get stressed and anxious because things aren't happening in a timely manner. It's taking too long. We feel out of control. We're frustrated. Maybe we're waiting for other people to do their bit. Maybe we're talking to different people, different authorities. Sometimes we need to be the one that coordinates, keeps everybody in the same loop so that everybody knows what everybody else is doing. We organise things together. It might be a family matter. It might be maybe a caregiving matter. Whatever we feel frustrated, whatever we're overthinking, whether it's finances or family or a work-related issue, it's really important. The first thing we do is we write it down. We look at where we are with it and then look at the ideal outcome. You have to know where you're heading. Where do I want to be with this realistically? We can think about, oh, I'd love this, but we have to look at where we are and what's the likely outcome, and then start making sure that every action and every step we take is heading towards that goal. Is this making sense? And reward yourself. Tell yourself, I did well today. And if you're not feeling like it, if you've not managed to make much progress, say, well, I'm doing the best I can. I've done everything I can right now. I'm going to get back on track tomorrow. I'm going to go off and distract myself, do something else, and I'll come back to it. And give yourself a time and then go back on. Because sometimes we get back off track. Sometimes we have to get ourselves back. We're human. Things won't always necessarily go to plan. Overthinking is a human thing. When we feel that something has happened we didn't want to happen, we feel out of control, we're dwelling on, we're ruminating about. It might be something that's a new change. It might be something that's unsettling. It might be something, even if we knew it was happening, even if we want it to happen, we might be thinking, how am I going to cope with this? This is a lot. It's like the scales start to change and we have to steady them. I don't know if you ever had one of those Weeble Wobbles, right? The toys that you used to get. You could never quite get them to stand up straight. And sometimes in life, you feel everything's going okay, or you're just managing, just coping, and then suddenly something happens. And suddenly it's like you're wobbling. You have these wobbles. And you think, oh, and it takes over. And you just don't know how to steady yourself. And sometimes you just need to go, breathe. Write things down. Step away from it. Orientate yourself. And understand where you are. And look at where you want to be. And then decide, can you do this on your own? Or do you need to recruit people? Friends, family. It might be official people. And then start. making it more of a task, a project to be able to get through this. Overthinking is human. But sometimes we just need to steady the course.